They walk among us, hidden in plain sight, feeding in silence. For centuries they have haunted our nightmares, lurking in the shadows just beyond the flicker of candlelight. But where did they come from? And why do they hunger for our very lifeblood? This is the untold story of the creatures of the night, the cursed, the undead, the vampires. Most believe vampires are merely myths, tales spun to frighten children. But what if I told you that the first vampire wasn't a creature of fangs and capes, but something far older? Something biblical? Ancient texts speak of a forgotten curse, one born not from folklore, but from divine wrath. The Book of Enoch, an apocryphal scripture, tells of fallen angels, the Watchers who lusted after mortal women. Their unholy union birthed monstrous offspring, the Nephilim. But when God struck them down, their souls were denied rest. They became the first revenants, beings cursed to wander the earth, thirsting for the blood of the living. Could these fallen ones be the true ancestors of the vampire? The original blood? From the deserts of Mesopotamia to the forests of Eastern Europe, every culture has its own version of the vampire. But none are as chilling as the Ekimmu of Sumerian lore. These were not the elegant aristocrats of modern tales. They were grotesque, bloated corpses that rose from their graves, desperate to drain the vitality of the living. In ancient Greece, the Lamii, women cursed for their sins, lured children into the darkness to feast on their blood. In India, the Rakshasa disguised themselves as beautiful maidens, only to reveal their true, monstrous forms under the cover of night. But the most terrifying legend comes from Romania. Not Dracula, but something older, the Strigoi. These were not just the dead who returned, but the living who sold their souls for immortality. They could transform into wolves, control the minds of animals, and vanish into mist. And worst of all, they could only be killed by complete destruction, decapitation, burning, and a stake through the heart. What transforms a man into a monster? Is it a bite, a curse, or something far more sinister? In Slavic tradition, those who died by suicide, were unbaptized, or were witches, would rise again as vampires. But the most horrifying method of becoming one? Being born different. In some villages, children born with teeth, a caul, a membrane over their face, or a tail, were immediately suspected of being future vampires. Some were even buried alive to prevent their return. And then, there's the Dhampir, the half-human, half-vampire offspring. These hunters of the night were said to possess the strength of their monstrous fathers but the soul of their mortal mothers. They walked the line between man and monster, forever searching for the creatures that cursed them. No vampire is more infamous than Vlad the Impaler, the man who inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula. But the truth is far darker than fiction. Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia, was no fanged aristocrat sipping wine from a goblet. He was a warlord who bathed in the blood of his enemies, impaling thousands upon wooden spikes. His cruelty was so great that even his own people whispered that he had made a pact with the devil. But was he truly a vampire? Or did his atrocities create the legend? Some say his spirit still lingers in the ruins of Poenari Castle, where travelers report hearing whispers in the wind and the distant sound of dripping blood. For every vampire, there was a hunter. In medieval Europe, vampire hunters were both feared and revered. Armed with garlic, holy water, and hawthorn stakes, they prowled graveyards at night, listening for the sounds of scratching from beneath the earth. One of the most infamous was Jure Grando, a 17th century Croatian peasant who returned from the dead to terrorize his village. For 16 years, he stalked the living until a priest and villagers drove a stake through his heart, making him one of the first documented cases of a vampire slaying. Then there was Arnold Paule, an 18th century Serbian soldier whose alleged vampirism sparked mass hysteria. When his grave was exhumed, his body was found fresh, with blood trickling from his mouth. The authorities ordered his decapitation and the burning of his remains. The fog curled like skeletal fingers around the iron gates of Highgate Cemetery as the first report surfaced in early 1969. A towering figure, pale as death itself, had been seen gliding between the crumbling Victorian tombs. Those who encountered it spoke of eyes that burned like embers and an unnatural silence that swallowed even the sound of their own panicked breaths. By 1970, the legend had taken hold. London was being stalked by something ancient, something hungry. Local newspapers dubbed it the Highgate Vampire, and soon the cemetery became a battleground between the curious and the terrified. Teenagers dared each other to spend the night among the graves, only to flee in terror before midnight. Then came the animals, foxes, cats, even a police dog, found drained of blood, their bodies arranged in strange ritualistic patterns. The most chilling discovery: a headless woman's corpse, exhumed from a sealed coffin, her burial dress stained with fresh blood. Two men emerged as self-proclaimed vampire hunters: David Farrant, an occultist who claimed to have communed with the entity, and Sean Manchester, who insisted it was a medieval nobleman cursed into undeath. On Friday, the 13th of March, 1970, Manchester led a mob of armed spectators into the cemetery, wielding a crucifix and a wooden stake. What happened next depends on who you ask. Manchester swore he banished the creature in a secret midnight ritual, while Farrant dismissed it as hysteria. But to this day, visitors report phantom footsteps behind them, the sensation of icy fingers brushing their necks, and the overwhelming feeling that something is watching from the shadows. The line between myth and medicine has always been thinner than we like to admit. Take Renfield syndrome, a psychiatric condition where sufferers become obsessed with drinking blood, convinced it will grant them power. Or xeroderma pigmentosum, a disease so sensitive to sunlight that victims blister in minutes, forcing them into a nocturnal existence. Then there's hematomania, a rare but documented compulsion to consume blood, often linked to iron deficiencies. But the most compelling evidence comes from the grave. In 2017, archaeologists in Poland uncovered a 17th century vampire burial, a skeleton with a sickle across its throat and a rock wedged into its jaw. Medieval precautions to prevent the dead from rising. Similar finds in Bulgaria and Ireland reveal corpses pinned down with iron rods, their mouths stuffed with garlic or bricks. These were not superstitions. They were desperate measures against something people truly feared. Modern science can explain much, but not everything. In 1996, a Romanian villager named Toma Petre died, only to return weeks later, his wife claiming he visited her nightly, leaving her weak and anemic. When his grave was opened, his body was inexplicably preserved, his lips smeared with fresh blood. The local priest performed an exorcism and burned the heart. The visit stopped. Coincidence? Or something far older, far darker that we still do not understand? The vampire legend has not faded. It has evolved. In New Orleans, the New Orleans Vampire Association hosts clandestine gatherings where members drink ethically sourced blood, believing it sustains their energy. In Las Vegas, a subculture of living vampires pays top dollar for donors willing to offer their veins in exchange for cash. And in 2019, a Swedish man was arrested after attempting to drain his own blood in a misguided bid for immortality. Then there's El Chupacabra, the goat sucker of Puerto Rico. First sighted in 1995, this creature leaves behind carcasses drained of blood, with 2 precise puncture wounds. Farmers swear it is no ordinary predator. It hunts silently, vanishes without tracks, and seems to enjoy the kill. Scientists dismiss it as mangy coyotes or diseased dogs, but the legends persist. In 2012, a Texan rancher claimed to have shot one, describing it as a hairless fanged thing with spines down its back. The body mysteriously vanished before it could be tested. Even pop culture feeds the myth. From vampire facial blood facials, made infamous by Kim Kardashian, to black market vampire kits containing vials of supposedly immortal blood, the obsession is alive and well. History warns us, Where there are shadows, there are things that hide within them. In 2013, a Serbian family fled their home after their teenage son began sleepwalking with his eyes open, whispering in a language no one recognized. He claimed to see a pale man standing at the foot of his bed each night. Doctors diagnosed night terrors until the family priest found 2 pinprick wounds on the boy's neck. In 2020, a British backpacker in Transylvania vanished near Bran Castle. His last journal entry read, "They say vampires aren't real, but tonight I heard something scratching at my door. It's not an animal, it's learning." His body was never found. So tonight, as you turn off the lights, ask yourself, is that creak just the house settling? Or is it the sound of something moving in the dark, patient, waiting for you to let your guard down? Vampires may be creatures of folklore, but fear is very, very real. And fear, dear viewer, is what keeps them alive. While Europe gave us Dracula, Asia's vampires are older, stranger, and far more terrifying. Here, the undead do not just drink blood, they steal breath, consume livers, and slither back from death as shape-shifting horrors. In the mist-shrouded villages of rural China, they tell of the jiangshi, the stiff corpse. Unlike the seductive vampires of the West, these reanimated dead move with grotesque, rigid hops, their arms outstretched like rotting marionettes. Born from improper burials or violent deaths, they drain not just blood, but qi, the life force itself. The most chilling detail? They hunt by sound. Folklorists in Guangdong province recount tales of families holding their breath as a jiangshi lurched past their doors, knowing even a single gasp would draw its attention. To stop them, villagers buried the dead with sticky rice, believed to absorb evil energy, and painted Taoist spells on their coffins. Imagine a woman by day, a monstrous predator by night. The Penangalan is a sorceress who detaches her head, trailing spine and dripping entrails as she flies through the moonlight, seeking pregnant women and newborns. Her weapon? A long, hollow tongue that slips through cracks to siphon blood from sleeping victims. In 1920s Penang, a rash of stillbirths was blamed on a midwife accused of being Penangalan. When authorities searched her home, they allegedly found jars of preserved blood hidden beneath the floorboards. She vanished before trial. Some say she still drifts over the jungles, her laughter echoing in the dark. Europe has its aristocratic vampires, but India's Rakshasa are older and far crueler. Shape-shifting demons from Hindu lore, they feast on flesh as readily as blood, often disguising themselves as beautiful women or holy men to lure victims. The most infamous tale comes from Rajasthan, where a Rakshasa allegedly infiltrated a royal court in the 14th century, impersonating a vanished prince. It was only exposed when a priest noticed the prince cast no shadow in moonlight, and that his dinner plates were always licked clean of blood. Not all Asian vampires drink blood. The Yukiona, Snow Woman, freezes her victims with a kiss, stealing their warmth to sustain her ghostly existence. In 1800s Hokkaido, woodcutters told of finding travelers frozen solid, their lips blue, their faces locked in expressions of ecstatic terror. A surviving Edo period scroll depicts a Yuki-onna with hollow eyes and elongated fingers, drifting through blizzards. The most unsettling detail? She sometimes spares one victim, usually a handsome young man, only to return years later to claim his children. European colonists dismissed these entities as superstition, yet their own vampire myths were shaped by the same fears, the terror of death defied, of loved ones returning wrong. But where Western vampires are solitary predators, Asia's undead are often tied to family curses or karmic debt, punishments for sins across lifetimes. Perhaps that's why, even today, you will find red talismans on doors in Taiwan to repel jiangshi, or Javanese mothers hanging thorned branches over cribs to snag a Penangalan's entrails. The methods change, but the fear remains the same. Something is out there, and it remembers where you live. We have followed their footprints through time, across continents, graves, and the edges of human understanding. But here is the terrible truth no chapter could fully explain. We need vampires, not as monsters, but as warnings. The Strigoi taught peasants to burn their dead properly. The Penangalan reminded midwives to guard the vulnerable. The Jiangshi's stiffened limbs showed what happens when burial rites are ignored. Every culture's vampire was a lesson disguised as a nightmare. Respect the dead. Protect the living. Never trust the dark.